listening to the 40 Thrive Podcast, the show created for women 40 and beyond, ready to shake things up. And now, your host, Jackie McDougall.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of 40 Thrive. I'm so excited you're here. If you're not yet in our Facebook community, what are you waiting for? We have awesome events happening this week. We're going to be having some live video series, special giveaways and gifts, and crazy, amazing opportunities all summer long as we move into some big changes. So check it out. The link is in the show notes, or just simply go to Facebook and search Kick-Ass Women Over 40. All right, we'll see you there. So a while back, I asked women in our community something they'd always wanted to do and just need a little push to do it. And many women talked about finally writing that first book. Well, you're in luck today. I'm talking with Jennie Nash, founder of the Author Accelerator. Jennie has spent 30 years on all sides of the publishing industry and is the author of 4 novels, 3 memoirs, and 1 self-help book for writers. Not only does Jennie's company coach people how to write their book, but she also trains people to become book coaches to support writers through the entire creative process. Could that possibly be your next big career move? Maybe. Who knows, right? If you are looking to become a published author or coach someone to be, check out the show notes at 40thrive.com/episode 107. There's a link in there that will take you to all of the amazing programs Jennie offers. Speaking of books, check out our 40 Thrive bookstore, also linked in the show notes. There you'll find all the books written by guests of 40 Thrive, from personal development to great reads about menopause and money, memoirs, marriage, and so much more. You will find them all at 40thrive.com/episode 107. And if you prefer to listen to books like I do, you can also get a free month of Audible. I love my Audible books. I listen in the car, on walks, or just doing chores around the house with my earbuds in. I mean, you already listen to podcasts. It's such an easy transition. Visit audibletrial.com/40thrive for your free month of Audible and a free audiobook download. Any one of their countless books on Audible can be yours for free. So definitely check it out. audibletrial.com/40thrive. Okay, let's do it. Here's my conversation with Jennie Nash. Jennie, welcome to 40 Thrive.
Thanks for having me.
So I've really been focusing on some of the career and creative goals of this 40 Thrive community. There's so many brilliant women, some who've already written books, some who want to write books. But there's one thing that really caught my eye was that you talk about charging for work that you've been doing for free. So we're going to get into that a little bit later. But first, take us back. How did you first get into publishing at all?
I always wanted to be in publishing. I always wanted to be a writer. I mean, from a very small age. My dad was a professor and a writer, and he used to sit we had a long ranch house in California, and he would sit in a study at the end of the hall typing, and that beautiful sound of a typewriter. And I loved everything about that, like that he was sitting there by himself, but doing work for other people that was going to go out in the world, and it was going to be made into this thing, like the whole thing. I just loved it, and I wanted to be that. So I went on the path a lot of people do, which is I was an English major in college, and then I went to New York and got a job in the publishing world. I got a job at Random House, and I was an editorial assistant. And
not a bad way to start in publishing, Random House.
Right? Oh, it was amazing. I learned so much. And this was back before computers. So, I mean, I'm only 56, but it sounds like ancient history, right?
Right.
Things would come in, manuscripts would come in envelopes, and I had to open them and stack them up. But it was great. I made my way in publishing. I made my way as a writer and wrote my first books, and that was my path. And I thought it would always be my path. But I began to teach writing at UCLA in their writers program. And in teaching writing, I began to see that I had a skill and a talent that I was not aware of, which was really nurturing and helping other people and bringing a market-focused, strategic mindset to this very creative work. And through that learning about myself, I made this pivot into being a book coach and helping other writers, then started a book coaching company, started training other book coaches, and have landed in this whole new place that I didn't even know was a place.
Yeah. The first thing that jumps out is the fact that you paid attention when you started to get to know yourself in this way. I can think of many authors who probably wouldn't make the best book coaches.
Interesting.
I mean, writing can be so isolating.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of a one-man show, right? At times until you go through the process and all that.
Yeah.
It's a special skill to be able to teach what you know.
That's right. The way that writing is taught in our culture is very craft-based. So it's very learn how to write this dialogue, learn how to write this scene. It's very craft-based, which is one aspect you have to learn, but it's so not the whole aspect. And the other way that we tend to teach writing is we turn to famous people and we say, okay, famous person, writer, how did you do it? And oftentimes what they're doing is not normal and it's not replicable because they're some genius level thing. And that's not the way for most people to learn how to do this work. So you're right. My big revelation was I have a special interest and talent in teaching this. And I have a way of teaching it that is needed in the marketplace.
Just hearing you say that makes me all warm and tingly because one of the things that I'm up against with the women I work with is they don't necessarily think that their skills are needed and important, even though I'm talking women who have been doing a variety of really impactful things for decades. Did you actually know this? Were you born with this confidence or did you go to somebody who sort of helped you through it?
To kind of go to confidence school? I mean, I think it's a combination of both. I absolutely went through what you're talking about, particularly in the very beginning of my book coaching business. I didn't know that I was good at things. It was just like breathing to me. So the ability to look at a piece of text and quickly analyze it. Well, first of all, to read it quickly and analyze it quickly and come up with a plan of action for how to fix it. It was just a thing that I did.
It's a gift.
But I had no idea. So my husband was instrumental in helping me see this. He has an MBA, so I would often turn to him for business advice or just basic financial knowledge, of which I have very little. And I remember very clearly, I would do a job for somebody and I would turn the work into them ahead of schedule. And he would say, don't do that. Hold on to it until the deadline, because it's going to make that client think you didn't spend long. Like there's this correlation between how long we spend and how much we value the thing.
Right.
Right. And if somebody can fix your thing in 15 minutes, you're going to think, well, that wasn't worth very much.
Right.
I brought a huge amount to that 15 minutes or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That was the first glimmer of an idea that other people value that thing more than you probably do. And that's kind of where it began for me.
Right. And sometimes we try to overcomplicate it too. So if you're teaching someone how to get started to become an author, you got to go back to basics, right? You got to meet them where they are. But as creatives, sometimes we're like, oh, we better get like complicated and fancy or else they're going to think that I wasn't as valuable.
Right.
But that just messes with people.
Right. But this is an idea or a concept that has actually never stopped being an issue for me or for the people that I train as book coaches. It becomes a central thing, which is what is valuable, what is perceived as valuable, what is actually valuable, and how do you price your work and how do you present your work. In my industry, there is a race to the bottom on pricing. So there are a lot of people that can edit pages, and there's a lot of people that can do that well. It's a skill that you can learn, and there's rules to the English language. There's now AI software that can do that work for you. So the race to the bottom is getting really intense around that. And that is not where the value lies in helping a writer. That's not actually what is most valuable. It is valuable, but it's not what's most valuable. So this idea of what does the writer need? How can we give it to them? How do we price that thing that they need, especially when it's not tangible? In my industry, there's a lot of things like you can write a book in 90 days.
Yeah.
You can write a bestseller. I can guarantee that you'll write a bestseller. And that means
cheaper, bigger, faster.
Yeah.
It's all that bogus promise.
All the bogus promises. It's hard when you're saying, I can promise you this intangible thing and you're going to pay me a lot more money for it than those tangible things. And that becomes the heart of helping people with these types of businesses.
Right. I can only imagine when you tell other women, or really any person, what you do for a living, how often you hear, oh, I've always wanted to write a book.
I mean, every day.
I can only imagine. I put it in our Facebook community, our 40 Thrive Facebook community this morning. I said, have you ever wanted to write a book? What's stopping you? Do you have questions? Because I love to bring questions, from how to organize the thought process prior to writing, or how to begin to outline it. Somebody's waiting for an amazing story to pop into her brain. Somebody's just scared. It's always like that thing I want to do in the future. So real quick, I do want to answer that question. How does someone get from, I want to write a book someday, to, I'm going to make this happen now?
Well, the question about being scared really gets right at that. Writing a book is a very public declaration. It is something you're really getting up on a soapbox and saying, I believe that I have something to say that other people will care about. And it's very
similar to podcasting.
Totally. It's very vulnerable. It's like, look at me. I think I'm so great. And you have to get past that. You have to embrace that. You have to say, yes, I have something I want to say. And I'm talking about fiction as well as nonfiction.
Okay.
So when somebody's writing fiction and they're writing a middle school story about dragons, they have something to say. And part of the work then is figuring out, what do I have to say? What exactly do I have to say? Which is, what do I care about? Why does it matter to me? Why might it matter to somebody else? So these very foundational questions about intention. And so the way to really get over all of the stuckness before you start, whether it's fear or someday, or even the question, I'm waiting for the right story, that's a question about fear. That's a question about, I need a story that's going to be worthy or big or good enough or different, or a story nobody's ever done, or, that kind of thing is what's behind it. A huge part of the work that I do is about validating what people already want to say or know they believe, or it's about raising your voice.
Right.
The first thing to get over that first hump is just claim it, claim your power, claim your space, claim that this is your time, claim that you want to be out loud about whatever you want to say, figure out what you're angry about or passionate about or care about, tap into that why. And that's going to get you past that first hump.
Right. Do you think it's equally as scary if you do want to write fiction versus nonfiction?
I do. I coach both, and the process is absolutely identical.
Really?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's twists to it, but it's laying the foundation and asking these questions. The first questions I ask of a fiction or a nonfiction client are exactly the same. The reason for that is because people think that, well, there's people on both sides, fiction or nonfiction, who think that, well, I'm going to find what I want to say through writing. That's a really entrenched idea in the creative universe, that I will write and then I'll figure out what I want to write, or I'll figure out what I want to say by writing. And you can do that. It is possible. I have done it. I know a lot of people who have done it. It's just incredibly inefficient. It's just a really inefficient way to get at a thing. But it absolutely is true for fiction and nonfiction. And sometimes people come to me who say, I have this story that I'm burning to tell. So that's the opposite of, I'm not sure what to write. They're burning to tell some story, and it usually is grounded in something they've experienced.
Right.
And the question is, should I write fiction or nonfiction? Because the nonfiction will be scarier because it's true or real.
Right.
And the fiction, I can kind of hide or pretend or couch it in something else, or I can make it aliens, or I can, whatever the thing is. And
I cannot piss off my family if I write a fiction.
right. That's exactly right. And what I always say is it doesn't work that way. You will be exposed and people will see whatever you're trying to hide, no matter what you write. So just forget that part and let's figure out what the best container is for your story, the best way forward for your story. So that idea that you can hide, you can't hide.
Yeah. Yeah. Same thing with podcasting, whether you are sharing your expertise in accounting or you're telling personal stories or you're interviewing, there's so much vulnerability there that you're afraid that people will discover that you're full of crap. But guess what? We're all full of crap in some way.
Right. And it's not just that. There will be people who disagree with you and who have evidence for why you're wrong and who will have passionate, arguments for why you're wrong. And we're not used to that. We're used to sort of, I think women in particular, get along, smoothing the way, not ruffling feathers.
Yeah.
And it's scary when somebody says, I disagree with that, or I think that that's damaging the way you teach writers. I've had people say that to me. How could you possibly, do this or that? Or they accuse you of things that feel just unfair and wrong. You're just taking advantage of writers' dreams or, whatever they come at you, they're going to come at you with something else. And that's what's scary is, like I said, it's taking up that space or claiming it.
Right. Although, I mean, as well as I do that if you are doing something creative and you're putting it out there in the world and everybody loves you, you're doing it wrong.
Yes, seriously. I'm like, who did that happen to? That's cool.
That's just not reasonable. You're not for everyone. So keep doing what you do best, I want to go back to the community. So 2 people would love to know the best way to organize the thought process prior to writing or to how to begin to outline it.
Yeah. And I just want to say that is the best question. So bravo
Yay,
to
Susanna
the person
and Stacy. Yay.
who asked those. So this is also about intention. People think that, if I outline, I'm going to ruin the flow or I'm going to ruin the mojo but that's just ridiculous. So the first thing to know is that working with intention at the start of a project, no matter what that project is, nonfiction or fiction, memoir, that intentional approach to the structure is, I think, the single biggest place that writers make mistakes is that they don't spend that time. They don't approach that with intention. They let it sort of unfold. And here's where you can save time. You can save frustration. You can save energy. You can really make or break a project at that moment of what is this going to be? And the question of shape or form or design or structure in writing is extremely unrecognized as a powerful spot. When I said before that we tend to focus on craft, like if you're talking about, I'm going to learn how to write really 3D characters, or I'm going to learn how to plot a thriller, or I'm going to learn how to write great dialogue, or I'm going to, in the nonfiction side, it might be get a whole bunch of really great research or interviews before I write, do studies, I'm going to get data, those are all secondary to what is the shape of this thing going to be. And what you want to do is you want to think about your reader. So you want to think about, I call it the transformation journey. So for fiction, it's the protagonist going through that transformation journey. And their story is about change. They start in one place and they end up in another. And there's usually some force of opposition or conflict that pushes them to change. In nonfiction, the person who's changing is your reader. You're leading them through a transformation journey. So that can be anything from, I'm going to teach you how to grill vegetables, to I'm going to teach you how to understand your relationship with your mother better, to I'm going to teach you how to market a book. there's a transformation. You start not knowing something and you end knowing something else. So
Right.
this gets interesting if you're talking about memoir, because it's a little bit of both of those pieces. The transformation journey is you, the protagonist in the story. You're writing your own story of change, but you're also in some ways mirroring the reader. You know, if I pick up Cheryl Strayed's book, Wild, and she's going on a backpacking trip that is going to expose, you know, the lies she's been telling herself her whole life, I'm probably going to gravitate toward that story because I'm interested in that transformation journey. So it's really thinking through, where do you want the boundaries of that journey to be? What do you want? What change are you going to be talking about? And if you can wrap your mind around that idea, you're 80% of the way to having a great structure, because you have a beginning and an end.
Wow.
And it goes somewhere. There's movement, there's drive, there's motion.
Right.
The worst books, stories, whatever, are flat. They don't go anywhere. There's no drive, there's no change, there's no story. So if we can get the outlines of that, the contours of that, now we've done a huge part of the work. And I make it sound fast and easy. It's usually really not.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, we make everything sound fast and easy, right?
Yeah.
So is there like a time before they're ready to work with you? Is it kind of like cleaning before the cleaning lady comes? You know what I'm saying? Like where they have to prepare. Oh, is that just me?
No, I love it.
Prepare themselves before they're ready for those steps. Because the last thing you want to do is, you know, spend some money, invest and all of that, and not actually be ready for that.
I think that is such a good question. And it really resonates with me because I just finished this morning a session where I was the client. I bought some business coaching from somebody that I really admire. And I was working on getting the new year really in place for my business. And I invested a lot of money and did this work. And it was one of these incredibly short and expensive little sessions. And it was so incredibly valuable. And the thing that I kept thinking is that most of the value of what I did with that business coach occurred before I even started with her. It was talking myself into it, telling myself that this was this was good money to spend, telling myself that it would pay off, and then the actual work that I had to do to prepare, that the work that she gave me to do to prepare to work with her.
Right.
By the time I literally got on the phone with her, I was on fire. I'd already solved all these problems. So in a way, the act of asking for help is part of the process of getting yourself ready. And the act of deciding to spend money and invest is a huge part of the work as well. So I would say that if somebody is thinking about writing a book and they've been sitting on an idea, or they have an idea and don't know where to start or structure it, the best time to get help is at the very beginning. That's where you want to spend your money. And a coach can help you refine the idea, plan the idea, brainstorm, hammer out all the important questions. Like the woman who asked, I'm waiting for the right story.
Right.
A coach can't help her, right? She's got to come into that idea her own self. Now, sometimes people will come to me and they'll say, I have 5 book ideas and I want you to help me figure out which one. And it's awesome because they're like, well, I'm thinking about this novel and I'm thinking about this other thing. And I've really wanted to do this, how to, and, you know, they're burning with all these ideas, and I can absolutely help them because usually there's some thread that's connecting them all. There's some reason why they're wanting to do them all. There's usually something behind it that you can kind of sort out.
Right.
And I think that's really fun. So anything short of, well, anything, I guess, past, I'd love to do this someday, but I don't really know what I want to do.
Yeah.
That's not going to be useful. But anything past that, I have 1 idea or 2 ideas, or I have this idea, but I'm not sure that it holds water. I think a good book coach will tell you if what your idea isn't enough, I'm doing air quotes, to be a book.
Yeah. I assume with all of your experience in book publishing that you know what's marketable.
Totally.
I can't imagine you'd want to waste their time and money if it's something that could be a simple ebook.
Right. And I don't have a crystal ball. Nobody does. But what I can do is I can listen. So why do you want to write this book? Why does it matter to you? What do you think you're going to get at it? What are your goals? And really, again, being intentional about that. If somebody says, my goal is to make a boatload of money, well, we might approach the project in a different way than if they're saying, my goal is to capture this idea because, well, I was just talking to somebody about this. She said, other people are starting to use my idea. Other people that I teach are starting to use my idea. And they refer back to me. They say, I learned this over here. And she's saying, but I want to claim that idea. I want to put a stake in the ground and own that idea. And it's like, yeah, you do.
Right.
That doesn't have to do with money. That's a different goal.
Right.
So you might have a different path to that.
Yeah.
So again, it's about intention, being intentional about your goal and what you really want from this.
Right.
And being honest about that. If your goal is, I want Reese Witherspoon to pick my book for her book club and make a movie out of my book, that's not in your control. But I actually just had a client for whom that happened.
Wow.
And her goal was she wanted to write commercial women's fiction, which means fiction that a lot of people buy.
Yeah.
So
chick lit.
Yes. And
I love chick lit. I'm here to say it right now. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Right.
It's just my escape from everything. Like for me, if it's nonfiction, I want to listen to it. But when it comes to, I mean, I call it chick lit, but for me, fiction that is female character driven is like the greatest gift to myself. I lie on my bed and I just like tune out all the men in my house and it's amazing.
Right. And there's particular qualities to it. You're not going to have something sort of deeply disturbing or dark. Right. You know, there's a safety, like there's boundaries around that idea. So this author, her name's KJ Dell'Antonia, and her book is The Chicken Sisters. It just hit the New York Times bestseller list.
Awesome. She
set out with the intention, I want to write commercial women's fiction. I want it to be smart. I want it to be fun. I want it to be light, but I want it to be deep and meaningful for people. And that was her intention. And everybody says they want Reese Witherspoon to pick their book.
Right.
It actually happened to her, but you can't control that. You can only control why you want to write it and what you want to do.
Right. And there's so many similarities when it comes to, I believe, being an author and being a podcaster, because, if you're looking to get into podcasting or into writing for the money, I just want to sit back and laugh for a little bit on that one because,
right.
Listen, this is your world, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm just going to sell millions and millions of copies and I'll never have to work again. That's 99% of the time is not what's going to happen if you publish a book.
It's exactly the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly the same.
And so even when I coach people how to start a podcast, like for you already have an expertise. So now you're talking about writing books and maybe some skills, and you've got a podcast and you're, giving out your free brilliance, right? Or your brilliance for free, I should say. You can then monetize by signing people on to work with you. Like that's the monetization.
Yeah.
So to be an author, there's so many other things, credibility, positioning yourself as an expert in your field, finally putting the stake in your idea that everybody's spreading that you don't have a place for. I mean, there's so many other reasons to become an author other than, I want to make millions.
That's right. And I think it is exactly the same as a podcast that you have to know why you're doing it. It's a huge amount of work. And it's, as you said before, it's very public. You're vulnerable. There's so many things that go along with it. And a lot of people do have that misunderstanding that they think they're going to make a lot of money from a book and you don't. So some people would say, well, then why would you do that? Why would you spend all that time? But the reasons you list are the ones it can really elevate you. It can give you voice. It can be why you're chosen to be on a panel or to be a speaker or to do a consulting gig or
media. I mean, my background is TV, like talk shows, morning shows, all of that. You have a book, it's much easier to book you.
Right.
Or to schedule you.
Right.
I said, I use
you
it book
have a book, you get booked.
Exactly.
Ooh, we should start a thing.
Get a book with your book.
Get booked with your book. Boom.
Boom. Trademark right here. Yeah.
Bookings actually should be a thing.
It really should. I'm writing it down. Don't tell anyone.
But don't steal that idea, people.
Yeah. Thankfully, this will be edited and published later, so we can be rolling in the dough before then. But yeah, it's totally true. And so there's so many other reasons to write a book. So I want to shift a little bit into this because you could, quote unquote, just be an author. You could write books. You know, some books do better than other books. I know people who write fiction. I know people who write nonfiction. They just keep writing, right? Mm-hmm. They're done. Now they move on. You discovered, obviously we talked about, that you were gifted in teaching. Mm-hmm. And so then you become a book coach and you teach other people how to do it. Great. That's certainly a greater opportunity for monetization. Mm-hmm. But you didn't even stop there. So then you create a program to actually certify people to become book coaches. Mm-hmm. If someone wants to sign up and become a certified book coach, do they have to be an author?
No. So the reason that I did it, other than blind stupidity, no, I'm kidding.
Blind stupidity. That's the name of my next podcast.
Is that right?
Yeah. If we didn't have blind stupidity, half the stuff wouldn't get done.
We're coming up with all the ideas.
I know, right? So let me start this question again, though. So now you coach people or teach people how to become certified book coaches. How did you make that leap? Let's start there.
So I made that leap because, well, there were a couple of steps that happened. I was a book coach my own self, and I started to have too much work. So I had a waiting list and I had people wanting to work with me. I couldn't serve them all. So I was maxed out. So I had the thought, I will train other coaches to help me because I have a particular process. I have a particular way of doing things. I have a particular philosophy. And then that would be great. I would have other people to help me. So I began to do that. And the focus was on writers. It was on serving writers. The writers were coming to me, writers were coming to us. And that was what it was all about. And that business model I worked on for about 4.5 or 5 years. It kind of went gangbusters. I had 32 coaches who were delivering this service that I had taught them to deliver. Mm-hmm. And we were serving writers and we were managing all the administration behind that. So onboarding the writers, taking their money, solving their problems, dealing with them when they had issues. And writers are a particular breed. There were issues and it began to be not cost effective. It was a bad business model. It was what I now know is a leaky business model. There were holes in it. There were problems in it. Oh. We were doing really well. And yet I was paying myself literally zero.
Yeah.
So my side gig was taking all this time and making a lot of money. We got close to $1 million of revenue with that model, but I was paying myself zero. So from the outside, it looked like, wow, 32 book coaches, who work for you and a staff of 4 and this, that, and the other. That's amazing. And it's like, yeah, actually, no.
Right. And just as a side note, that's what's happening with a lot of people online who are trying to tell you to follow what they do and that they brought in $1 million in revenue, but their expenses are $990,000.
Right. And mine were high because I had labor costs and labor costs are high. And meanwhile, I was preaching this thing about we should charge more money. We're offering something of such value. We should raise our prices. And there was some tension around that because I was not paying my people. I was paying them close to minimum wage. So there was a disconnect, a mission disalignment, if you will.
Yeah. Okay.
So there were lots of things with it. And I was getting actually sick. I was really having a hard time. So I made a decision and I thought, well, I could stop. I could blow the whole thing up. I could go back to being a book coach my own self. But I kind of got a taste of what it would be like to have this thing that was making a mark in the industry. I kind of had a little taste that I was doing something innovative and different. And I thought that was cool. And I didn't want to let that go. So that ambition piece of me looked at it and said, well, wait a minute. We have a whole book coach training program that's incredibly effective that people are asking to be part of. People thought that we had it. We had 120 people on a list to do our book coach training program, which we didn't even have as a thing. It was something we did internally. So I pivoted to teach the teachers, which is a classic online course thing to do.
Yeah.
And that pivot, we launched that at the beginning of 2019 before the pandemic hit. And we expected to have a rough year with that pivot. And it actually turned out to be an extremely good year. The pandemic, sadly, was so hard for so many people. I mean, that's a gross understatement, but played really well into exactly what we were doing, which is here's a side gig that you can do on your own time in your own house, as much or as little as you want. You can be in control of it. It's good, satisfying, soulful work. You can charge for it because it's something people value. And it just spoke to the time. So we had a really good year. So now we're hired a full-time marketing person and we're going all in on that new model.
That's great. I love that because you're still doing what you were doing. It just looks a little bit different. And so when someone signs on to become a book coach with you, they go through your program, and then do you just kind of like send them out to the world like a little birdie, or do you, do they work for you? Do they work with you? Or are they just kind of like, go fly?
I'm laughing, Jackie, because you're like asking the question that is my biggest pain point at the moment. We did not think that totally through. So it was, we had this robust training program. We're going to bring people in. We're going to move them through. We've now certified 60 coaches on the fiction side. And actually this morning, I certified our first nonfiction student because we launched that course second. Super excited about the nonfiction side. But in my mind, I was like, this is my pivot. It's so successful. We have this great, robust program. People love it. They're coming in. We've got it dialed in, like, yay me. And then it was that question of, well, then what happens to them?
Right.
And that's the question we're now having to really answer, because they're asking, how do I build my business? How do I serve my customers? How do I, all the things? And do we send them to other people to get that information and help? Or do we start a whole new thing to help them with that? And
right. That's a great question, because you could just be like, now you know how to be a book coach. It's not necessarily in this program to learn how to market yourself, but it would be valuable if they got it all in one place.
It's a really interesting question. And it's a question a lot of businesses are going to have, because every business expert is going to tell you, you have to focus. The only way to grow and scale and sustain is to not do all the things. That's true whether you're one person, whether you're a podcaster or you have a whole team or whatever. You can't do all the things and be known for something. Mm-hmm. Also, from a book coach perspective, it would be, I'll help anyone with anything at any stage of any project.
Right.
That's not a great way to build a business. So, everyone will tell you focus, 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 but then people will also tell you, but if your people are asking for something that you can give them. So that's the question I'm really trying to answer now is, can I uniquely give them the thing they're asking for? Or are there other people who are just as able to give them that thing? Like, does it have to be me? Mm-hmm. So can they go to any small business coach and get what they need, or do they need to learn this from a book coach? So those are the things we're turning over now for the new year and trying to solve and figure out. So you never just get to like rest and say, I did it.
Yeah. Well, you do if you want to stay in the same place.
Yes.
So yes. It is a choice. And I love that you're constantly innovating and listening and learning and all of that. I think, as I mentioned, you could have just stayed writing, then you became a book coach. Then you're like, oh, I could teach other people how to become a book coach. And there's constant growth, right? I was reading your bio that it all happened, when the kids started to leave the nest, and that's when you really put it all into this. So a year from now, we're going to talk again and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I did that thing, or I did this, or I pivoted, or and you just keep going. You just don't give up. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, everybody says that about entrepreneurs, and that, get comfortable with failing. And I mean, when it's a theory, it's one thing, but when you're actually living it, I happen to think it's really fun. I think it's a really fun process. And there are certainly parts of it that are not fun. There's days that are bad. There's, anytime you let somebody down or have to let somebody go, or, all of that is a bad day. There's days where I think, I don't know what I'm doing. I wasn't trained for this. I don't know anything, like, where's the adult in the room?
Back to, we're all faking, remember? We're all full of crap.
I'm always just like, where's the adult in the room who's going to make the decisions? And then it's like, oh yeah, that's me.
It's like simultaneously wondering when you're going to become an adult and yet seeing your neck age before your very eyes. It's such a fascinating place to be, isn't it?
It really is. It really is.
What are you going to do? All right. Maybe you're listening. You're thinking about writing a book. Maybe you've written a book and you want to think about becoming a book coach. But for many people, they do something that they've been sort of just giving away for free, whether it is advice or mentorship. I mean, there's just so many women out there who are extremely helpful and they have a gift that comes very easily to them. And it goes back to what you said right at the beginning. If something comes so easily to you and you can explain it in 15 minutes, why should I get paid for it? Well, because you should.
Yeah.
If I take my car and you take your car to the mechanic and your mechanic takes 3 hours and mine takes 15 minutes, I actually think mine is more valuable because he just saved my whole day.
Right.
But that's what we do is like, we're like, oh, it has to be really hard and arduous and take a long time to make any money. So get that out of your head right now if you're listening. So how do we start charging for work we've been doing for free, Jennie? Talk to us.
Well, and I do think this is a huge problem for women because women love to help. We're good at helping. It's natural for us to do so. There's a lot of ways we can do so. So in my world, usually what happens is somebody becomes known as being good with words. So you're the person who people come to when their kids are writing their college application essays, right?
I actually am. So yes.
Right. So, my friend who's this, I'm going to ask her to help read this over. Or I'm giving a TEDx talk. I'm going to go to that person who's good with words to look over my speech. Or I got asked to write an article in my trade, whatever. I'm going to go to that person who's good with words. Or I'm in a writing group and there's one person who's so generous and helpful and gives great feedback. We're all going to give our pages to her. So in everyday situations that people encounter with their friends and their family and their neighbors, they're being asked to do this work. And they do it because they're generous and they're helpful and they're giving. But the trick is to realize that it is work. Mm-hmm. It is work you are doing, and people are coming to you because you're good at it and they value it.
Yes.
And the hardest possible thing in this scenario is telling your friends. And I still have trouble with this because, so I have a beautiful website. Well, actually right now it's kind of under construction, so it's not that beautiful, but by the time
beautiful-ish.
this podcast comes out, it will be beautiful. I have a beautiful website. People come to it. There's all the arguments and the rationale and the FAQs and the money and the thing. And somebody who doesn't know me gets in that process and does what they're supposed to do, and they click and it's all good. My next door neighbor, though, doesn't even go to my website. She just comes and she knocks and she says, oh, so I wondered if you could da, 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 da. And you're like, do you not know what I charge for this? Do you not know that this is what I do? And that's what I'm thinking in my head. And the answer is no, she does not, because I have not told her so.
Right.
So the first thing is you have to get a script that you can just keep in your back pocket all the time, all day long. That when people say, could you just, I wonder if, could I pick your brain? Could I take you for coffee?
Pick your brain.
Right.
Yeah.
Could I take you for lunch? Like that's the big offer. Could I take you for lunch?
I'm like, you know what? A bowl at Chipotle is not going to do it.
Right. And it's also like, I don't take lunch. I'm running a busy business. No, you can't take me to lunch.
Can I buy you coffee? I'm like, no, thank you.
Right. So the first thing to do is get a script that you keep in your back pocket for when that happens, to say, oh, I would so love to help you. Why don't you check out my website and you'll see that I've got a download for that or a special for that. Or if you sign up for my newsletter, I have a thing, or I have a little course, or I have a $49 thing that is exactly about that. Like you've got to just have the words that will come out of your mouth And it's the hardest thing because it's usually your sister's assistant or your brother's kid it's usually really close to you and you feel like an idiot.
Yeah.
And you feel like I'm a mean and ungiving person.
Yeah.
But the more you practice doing this with those in that immediate circle, it becomes so easy to do it with strangers.
Yeah. Boundaries.
I've gotten super brazen. Like sometimes people will remember when we used to have like a cocktail party.
Oh yeah. I remember those.
Yeah. So like you'd go to a party where you didn't know people and you could be with them. So people would find out what I do and just what you said before. Oh, I've always wanted to write a book. Can I just ask you? And they'll launch into their thing. And, I'll be polite. I'll answer a few things and I'll say, you know what? This is actually what I do for a living. I'm a consultant and this is what I do for a living. And I've gotten kind of really bold and I'll even say, and I'm really good at it. And if you would like my help, this is how you could proceed. And it gets easier and easier and easier to say, and better and better and better for you to do that. So that's step one, is stop giving stuff away for free.
Yeah.
And recognize that it's work and recognize that you're doing it and recognize that there's a pattern. Why are all these people coming to me? Oh, because I know something and I have learned something and I have wisdom to share. So,
right. So for me specifically in teaching, all different creative, but mostly podcasting, I most often offer a free hour with me on the phone or Zoom or whatever. And I got to tell you, it's just as much for me as it is for them, because I can see if you're really going to do the work and if I really want to work with you. And then I will send them maybe to my DIY course or whatever, instead of a group or a one-on-one of a variety of different options. And sometimes it's just, they just had some questions and it's someone I used to work with in TV and I helped them. And then I end up getting 3 clients down the road because I did that.
Yeah.
So what do you think of that? Is it giving too much away, or I'm just curious your opinion?
It's tricky and I think that there's no right answer because I have I'll tell you what I have in a moment, a very particular intaking process so that I don't do that. All of this is about recognizing patterns. Why is everybody coming to ask me about that? Oh, look at this is the 3rd person who's asked me to do that thing. That's a pattern recognition.
Yeah.
That's step one.
And you could create a freebie around that, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Make a little course. I have this free course. I recorded a video because I got so many people asking me that question.
Yes.
Here it is. That's the script, right?
Perfect.
And maybe making a product to go with it. But what happened to me, I started recognizing this pattern. I would do those hour-long discovery calls or are we a good fit calls. And just the way that I am, the way that I work and the way my brain is, I was solving people's problems. I was coaching them. I was like, have you read this book? This totally should be one of your comps. Have you done that? You should look at their TOC. Oh my gosh, have you Let's go look at this website. Oh,
you were going for it.
Oh, I was so bad. And then they'd be like, thank you so much. This is awesome. I'm good. And they would go away.
Right.
And the pattern that I recognized was I am resentful after I have these calls. I feel resentful. And whose problem is that? That would be my problems.
Yeah.
That was what I recognized. I went to a business coach. There's a different coach than the one I just went to, also super excellent. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? And I didn't know what I was doing wrong. I just knew I was resentful. And this was Pamela Slim, who's the author of a book called Escape from Cubicle Nation. And she has a new book about to come out.
Love it.
She's awesome. Pam Slim. So I did a coaching thing with her and she goes, okay, I want you to charge $1,500 for those hour-long discovery calls.
Woo!
And I was like, what? I'm going to go from $0 to $1,500? And she said, yes. And you're going to do it tomorrow. And I did that thing. I was like, that's funny. That's for other people. That's not for me.
Yeah.
Who's going to pay for that? Like all those things. She goes, you're doing it and you're doing it tomorrow. So I did. And I think I sold 10 of them in the next 2 months.
Nice.
And all of a sudden then I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't like ad hoc one-off advice giving. I like working with people over time.
Yeah.
I like seeing a project unfold. So it taught me.
Like your book, a whole transformation.
Right? But it was just completely fascinating. Well, I'm here to tell you that the coach that I just went to, whose name is P.S. Silva, she is a Forbes columnist, small business coach.
I'm going to add all these people to the show notes if anyone's interested in looking them up.
So Pia, this is now 2.5, 3 years after I went to Pam Slim, does this deep dive analysis on my problems in my business because now I have new problems. And she said, yeah, you're going to charge $6,000 for that call now.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Just for those of you who are listening at home, my mouth is agape.
Right. So
$6,000 an hour.
yes.
All right. Keep going.
Now there's stuff that comes before and there's stuff that comes after, but it's a little package that I was for many years doing for free. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about continuing to up your game on your own sense of what you're doing and the value that you're bringing and knowing where that value lies. And my value happens to just lie in the very first conversation. That's just where it happens. I have to organize my business around that. So I want to tell you a quick story because I know we're running out of time, but this idea of
I'm the boss. I run out of no time.
So, I'm cracking myself up. Okay, so here's how, if somebody's listening to this and they're like, okay, yeah, I'm not at that $1,500 an hour or $6,000 an hour point, but this idea of asking for your worth is intriguing to me. Here's the way I teach my new book coaches who are not in a position to ask those things. So that race to the bottom we were talking about, there's a thing in book coaching, which is called a query letter. It's the pitch that you give to an agent, either fiction or nonfiction, when you want to sell a book. It's a tiny letter. It's a couple paragraphs and a lot hinges on it. So there's a lot of people who do query letter edits, and you can get a query letter edited for like $50 or $100, and you're going to get a good edit. Your letter's going to be solid. It's not going to have mistakes. It's going to be good. So yay you. That is a thing that a coach could offer is a $100 query letter edit.
Yeah, a little one-off.
But what I do, so my query letter package is $8,000. And so what is the difference between $100 and $8,000? It's not that I'm so great that I can do such a better edit on the letter. It's that I recognize what is happening when that writer is doing that letter. And what they're doing is they're crossing a line from being a writer to being a marketer. And they're scared and they need to do a lot of preparation work and homework and research. What agents are you going to pitch? Are they the right agents? Are they open to queries? How are you going to approach them? What's your strategy? How many are you going to send? When are you going to pitch? Are your pages ready? Are they polished? Do you have what they're going to ask you for? What are you going to talk about when you get on the phone with that agent? So there's 9 million things that they need that I'm giving them for $8,000 that somebody else is giving them a tiny fraction of for $100. So that's the question of, well, what do they really need? And that's that thing we were talking about, that it's so ineffable. I can't say exactly you get X and that's why it's worth so much more money. It's my responsibility to tell them why that's more valuable and why they need it and what the benefit is. I have to convince them. So when I'm teaching my new coaches, I'm hammering away at them. Don't charge just $50 for the service, for the commodity, for the thing anybody can do. Tell your writers, give them that transformation journey. Take them somewhere they really need to go. And then you better charge for that.
Right.
That's how we get onto the path of being able to charge $6,000 for one phone call, is when you can articulate the value. So Pia, well, in our call, you're getting the benefit of Pia because I just talked to her.
Thanks, Pia.
Thanks, Pia. Pia says the only thing standing between you and this money is literally just hitting the button on your website to make it so. Like, that's it. It's all in your control. You are at a place in your career and your business where, I have a 5-month waiting list at very high prices. I had a killer 2020 in terms of my client successes and demonstrable success. I know that what I do works. Like, these things are all true. So I'm not new at this. So, what she was saying is it's just, I have to decide, do I want to be working like a crazy person and scrambling and, making myself nuts, or do I want to charge more, take fewer clients and have a more reasonable life, or do I want to just turn a lot of people away?
Right.
I'm at that crossroads, but what I tell my book coaches is where you are is no different from where I am. It's just a different number.
Yeah.
We're just talking about maybe another 0 on the end or something, but it's the same thing. And the lesson in that is you never can stop doing it. So you always have to be thinking about, what is the true value I'm offering? How am I serving my client? What do they need? How can I give it to them? What can I uniquely give them? And what am I selling? Am I selling a query letter edit, or am I selling a transformation of a writer to somebody who can be in the marketplace with their book?
Right. And I have a son who is going through driver's education, and, he has a driving instructor. Now, if you wanted to race the Indy 500, you wouldn't go to her, probably
Right.
his driving instructor, because that's not what she's. So I can imagine, if you want to write a book, you could go to somebody who's at a lower price point if you just want to know what the steps are.
Right.
But the fact is that you are taking all these years of experience too, and sort of shortcutting and making it much more impactful. It may take you X amount of months or a year to get through this one. You either pay with money or with time in many of these services.
That's right.
That's basically it. So do they have the budget, or can they find the budget, or whatever it is, to fast track this process? Or do you have all the time and not the budget where you want to go with somebody at a lower rate? That's kind of how I see it. Is that sort of how you see it?
Yeah. Well, and what you're talking about is knowing your customer, knowing who they are, what do they want, what are their goals? Are they just trying to finish a draft of a book because they haven't been able to do it on their own and it's killing them, and that's their dream, is I just want to finish this thing?
Right.
Are they working on their 4th book and they're on a publishing contract and they only have 9 months to finish, and they better hit that deadline, and they need accountability and feedback to hit it? That's a different customer. They're both writers, they're both writing books, but it's a different customer. So you have to really know, and you have to really dig into this. It's not just, I help people writing fantasy. It's well, where are they in the process? Have they written before? What do they know?
Right.
What do they not know? What do they want?
Right.
What do they need? And at Author Accelerator, we had this problem in the very beginning. We had this service that was $199 a month, and you got a 10-page edit every week. And that's a killer good deal.
Yeah.
And we did that for quite a while. And the customers we were getting were needy, demanding. It was really problematic. And it was making me, again, the kind of antenna is when you're really frustrated and resentful. And I would find myself talking badly about our customer. Like, what's the matter with them? And
Right.
And then I had to stop and think, okay, wait, we are attracting that customer by the design of this program, by the price of this program. We are attracting those kinds of people. We need to dramatically change that.
Right.
So we shifted to a $3,000 program. We were doing this $199 a month that there was no, you could do it 1 month, you could do it 6 months. There was no, and I thought that was so cool. Like, there's no commitment. You get this awesome help.
And then you get people who aren't committed.
That's right. So it's like, you know what? It's $3,000. It's 6 months. You're either in or you're out.
Yeah.
And that's when our business actually really took off, is when we started to serve the right customer with the right product. And it's not always the cheap and easy thing that's right for a business. There's some businesses that is right for, but it was not ours. And so it's that continual process of discernment. And, I don't know, just for me, it's whenever I get upset, resentful, jealous, sad, overwhelmed, that I think, what's not right? Something's not right. And it's usually something in my control. It's usually never other people. Mm-hmm. I start by thinking it's them. Why are all my clients so needy and demanding and think that I'll answer their texts on Saturday mornings and Sunday afternoons? What's the matter with them? It's like, that's
yeah. Oh, it's because I've been answering their texts and emails at Saturday mornings.
Or not even that. It's worse for me. I'll be like, just text me. I'm going to be working anyway. Just let me know and I'll take a look and da, da, da. Yeah. I literally invite it. And then I'm like, what's the matter with them? It's like, Oh,
Right. That is such a universal issue right there that we do all the time. We want to be so accommodating, and then we're ticked off when somebody oversteps their boundaries, which, by the way, you have not actually created. So if you learn nothing else today, stop doing that.
that's why I go to the business coaches. I need them to slap me around and tell me you've lost control of your business and your boundaries. Get them back.
Yep. I am a huge believer in coaching and upping your game through the experience and expertise of someone else.
Yeah.
That's why I go to a trainer, because otherwise, plenty of people press play and sit in their living room and do their workouts. Like, that's not me. I know that if I don't show up, she's going to be calling me, like, what's wrong with you? So anyway, this has been so helpful. I know that there are so many dreams that the 40 Thrive community is going to go for this year, and writing your first book or your second book or your 20th book it's a huge accomplishment and something that can be done. And I love how you break it down. And if maybe you don't want to be an author, like, what is it that you know how to do that everybody goes to you for free at this point? Like, let's talk about monetizing that. There are some episodes coming up where we talk a little bit more about that. So this is very exciting. Thank you so much, Jennie.
I love it. It's going to be a great year. I hope your listeners go kill it.
Yes. Getting it done in 21.
Oh, look at you.
There we go. Thanks, Jennie.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. We keep the conversation going in our free and private Facebook group, so make sure you join us over there. Also, if you have any questions, comments, wishes, hopes, dreams of something you'd like to hear on 40 Thrive, send us an email at hello@40thrive.com. Until next time, take care and keep thriving.